Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today, I'm looking at some Dynasty sells. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Let's go. So, first player, Ricky Pearsall. Now, I'm not saying that I dislike Ricky Pearsall because I don't. He's definitely going to have an opportunity to contribute after the Deebo Samuel trade. But I think some people are valuing him like he's a sure thing. And I don't agree with that at all. I mean, last year, he played 11 games, 31 catches, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 46 targets, 2.8 catches, and 36.4 yards per game. Of course, this needs some context. Pearsall missed the first 6 games after his shooting incident happened in the summer, which obviously derailed his rookie year. And he served for most as the wide receiver 3 for most of his time upon his return. Now, of these numbers, over half the yards occurred in the final 2 weeks. 14 catches, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, 18 targets over the final 2 weeks. But one of these was that crazy shootout game versus the Lions. And the other was week 18, where Brock Purdy didn't play. Juwan Jennings got ejected. Deebo Samuel sat out, and George Kittle barely played. So we saw one legitimate game against the Lions where Pearsall was really good and played a significant role. So there's not much there. Now, why do I have Pearsall as a dynasty sell? Well, questionable college profile, and he turns 25 in September. So he was a fine player in college. He was fine, but he didn't do anything NFL worthy until his 5th college season. He was not a Devy prospect. Before 2023, he never broke 48 receptions or 661 yards. Those were not even in the same year. So he was in college for 4 years. He didn't do anything that we cared about. Then in 2023, he had 65 catches, 965 yards, and 4 touchdowns, but that's not exactly the best numbers of all time. So he turns 25 in September. Now, he's not old. I'm not saying he's old, but this is not a player who, well, we can wait to develop. Oh, it's going to be an improvement in year 2, and then in year 3, it's going to be better. That's not going to work. He needs to break out and be fantasy relevant immediately, not continue to develop. Continue to develop, he's not going to pay off on his current valuation. And then, we know that the 49ers could bring in another wide receiver. We're going to see about that. Brandon Ayuk, there's flux. There's a lot of other things going on, but I wanted to focus just more on Pearsall himself than other things that might or might not happen. Now, how do you sell Ricky Pearsall? Well, the deals that I found were interesting. This first one I really liked. Ricky Pearsall and Breece Hall for Malik Neighbors. I'd do that. I mean, that's not even about Ricky Pearsall. But again, this is treating Ricky Pearsall clearly as if he's a guaranteed producing wide receiver. Even then, it's a bad trade. I'd rather have Malik Neighbors. And that's at, the most generous valuation of Ricky Pearsall. So obviously I would do this. Then there's this one. Ricky Pearsall and Nick Chubb for 108. I mean, something's wrong here. Either Nick Chubb is being way overvalued, he's worth nothing, or 108 is being way undervalued. Regardless, I would take the 108. Even in this year's class, I'd rather have that over this package of players. And then this last one, Ricky Pearsall, Anthony Richardson, and 203 for Patrick Mahomes in 12-team Superflex. I'll just take the quarterback. The quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, who's going to hold value for years. These other 3 pieces, at the end of the day, it's 3 maybes. I mean, 203 is a maybe. Anthony Richardson, definitely a maybe. Ricky Pearsall, to me, is a maybe. That does not equal Patrick Mahomes. So these are 3 ways you could move on from Ricky Pearsall. So my next sell, Davante Adams, and he was released by the Jets this week, but I wanted to kind of explore why I have Davante Adams as a sell. So in 14 games last year, 85 catches, 1,063 yards, 8 touchdowns, 141 targets, 6.1 catches and 75.9 yards per game. But of course, those numbers came with 2 separate teams. Oddly, not that different across the 2 teams. With the Raiders, 6 catches and 69.7 yards a game and a touchdown, almost identical to his 2023 numbers. So he's still playing well. And then with the Jets, across 11 games, 6.1 catches and 77.6 yards a game, 7 touchdowns. So they were lower than his 2022 numbers, but better than 2023. So Adams was not washed in 2024. He actually was still pretty good. However, why do I have Davante Adams as a dynasty sell? Well, a couple things. One, I'm not going to get too deep into this, but because that's just not, we don't go into that kind of meta analysis on the YouTube channel. But I've talked about this in the Patreon a lot, and we've had deeper dives into it. In the Dynasty era, since 2014, basically 32, 33 years old is the end. It's the end of a wide receiver. Done, finished. The only one who beat the odds was Larry Fitzgerald. That's it. It's the only receiver who gave you significant, real, meaningful value since we've been playing Dynasty Fantasy Football. Every other wide receiver has completely fallen apart at that age, 32, 33. It's usually 33 is finished, done, gone. Even those who didn't show signs of decline. So in addition to that, aging wide receivers changing teams even do more poorly, typically. Now, if Adams goes back to with Aaron Rodgers, I think that'll increase the odds that he beats the odds, but it'll also increase what I can get for him in a trade, which would still make him a sell. But we have seen that a good quarterback doesn't necessarily save an aging wide receiver changing teams, as we saw with Amari Cooper, who went to the Bills and was awful. So how do you sell Davante Adams? Now, some might say it makes more sense to sell Adams after he signs because there'll be a bounce in value. And that's true, potentially, assuming he signs somewhere we like. He might not sign somewhere we like. But regardless, on a player like this, at the end of the day, I don't want Davante Adams, right? I don't want Davante Adams. I don't want a 32-year-old wide receiver who's going to turn 33 in season. I don't want that. So if I can get rid of Davante Adams at a price that I'm happy with, I'm not going to wait to try to get a better deal, slightly better deal in a week. There's no reason to do that. So the first one, sell Davante Adams and Cooper Kupp for a 26 first. I would just do that. Get rid of two toxic assets. I mean, Cooper Kupp looked done. For 126 first, which is going to be valuable. Easy. I would do that in a heartbeat. Second one, sell Davante Adams for Matthew Stafford, 12-team Superflex. Now, if I had to bet, what's more likely? Quarterback beating the age curve or wide receiver beating the age curve? It's a quarterback. Quarterback is more likely to beat the age curve than a wide receiver. There are quite a few examples of quarterbacks at 38, 39, 40 still being good. There are one example of a wide receiver at 33 still being good. So the next best is like Adam Thielen, and that's not valuable. So it's hard. I would take the quarterback pretty easily here. And then second, the last one, Davante Adams and Nick Chubb for 206 and 26 second. A pattern here is that Nick Chubb is considered to have value. He has no value. I would just take this. It's probably the least good of the three, but if it's this or nothing, I would take this. Now, I did a whole video on this, so I'm not going to go too long. But if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. And many people did after my Patreon promo video. So we're going to continue to have those videos. Right now, I'm offering a 50% discount at all tiers using the code TylerYT. A lot of people have really liked that. I think it's really, really about the right ideas to give a really big discount for 1 month to reward people watching the YouTube content. I'm going to continue having some sort of discount throughout the year. It might be lowered in season, but this is something that's going to continue. It's been actually a big boost to people signing up. So continue watching the YouTube, continue using this code to get a discount. You can get, talked about this on the video, my rankings, access to Discord, write-ups, DM fantasy advice, ability to ask and advanced questions for YouTube videos. You can see all of that on the Patreon promo videos on my channel if you want any more details about what any of those things are, or ask in the comments. Tiers begin at just $5 a month, $250 with a discount. Again, take advantage of that discount. And if you want to know more about the Patreon, as I've been saying, check out the why you should join the Patreon videos on the channel. They're in the Patreon promo section of the homepage. With that said, we'll get into my next player. So my next player, Alvin Kamara, as a sell. I don't want to say that Kamara is going to become bad in 2025, but I don't think that 2025 is going to be a repeat of 2024. Now, why don't I think that? Last year, Kamara had actually a lot of rushing volume. 228 carries, 950 yards, 6 touchdowns, 4.2 yards a carry, and 68 catches, 543 yards, and 2 touchdowns. At age 29, this was the second most carries of his career, most efficient rushing season since 2020. So do I think that Alvin Kamara, at 29 years old, magically handled more volume and was more efficient, and that was the Saints' plan? Probably not, right? We know that Kamara injured his groin in week 15 and missed the rest of the season. It crushed people in the fantasy playoffs. Maybe people don't remember that. That would be nice. Why is Alvin Kamara a dynasty sell? So he'll be 30. Eventually, the wheels will come off, and it does. We talked about this with Davante Adams, the wide receiver age curve. How many running backs have been relevant in their 30s? Derrick Henry? That's it, really? Recently? I mean, none. Dalvin Cook, cooked. Ezekiel Elliott, cooked. Very rare. Austin Eckler, wheels came off this year at age 29. So it's just hard to bet on a 30-year-old running back continuing to be good, because the odds are that he will not be. Now, I do think we're going to see a new plan for the backfield. We're not going to see a repeat of 2024. Obviously, Alvin Kamara is not Saquon Barkley, who Kellen Moore had as his running back last year. But we do have some history of Kellen Moore dealing with backfields before that. In 2023, Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator who phased out the usage of Austin Eckler. That doesn't sound so good. What about before that? He was the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, and for 4 years created a backfield split between Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. Oh, that could be interesting. I think we're going to see more of that. Because the Saints released Jamal Williams. He was irrelevant. And Kendre Miller has not done anything. Neither player was healthy in 2024. Taysom Hill got hurt, probably is not coming back, cap casualty. So Kamara got over 16 carries a game. That's not happening. A 30-year-old Kamara is not getting 16 carries a game. That was not the plan. So the Saints have been linked to running backs in the 2025 NFL draft. Now, do I buy that they're going to take Ashton Jeanty at 9th overall? I have heard it. Do I buy it? Not really. Do I think that the Saints are going to go into 2025 with Kendre Miller as their backup? No, that's not going to happen. So there's going to be someone else who is going to get more volume. It is going to happen. There will also be more receivers. They're not going to have every receiver get injured and Alvin Kamara have to pick up the slack there either. It is not going to be a repeat of 2024. That is not happening. So with that being said, I think some people are still valuing Alvin Kamara as if he's going to be very valuable. I think he's going to be usable, but not what he was. So if I think that, then there's this first deal. This was interesting. Sell Alvin Kamara, Kyron Williams, the 26th first to the 101. I would definitely do that. I would take Ashton Jeanty over that package pretty easily. Then there's sell Alvin Kamara for the 112. I would just do that. I mean, he's never going to be worth more. So I take the 112, see whatever I can get there. It's going to be worth more long-term than Alvin Kamara, or I can trade that pick on the clock later for something else. And then this last one, Alvin Kamara in a 27 second for a 26 first. I kind of like the range of outcomes of a 26 first more than the 112. Could be an earlier pick, but again, this is the kind of thing I would do to get out of an asset like Alvin Kamara, who, doesn't really fit in with the way that I play Dynasty. So there's just a lot going on in the NFL. So this is going to be a bit of a supersized episode. But next up, Christian Kirk was traded to the Texans and Evan Engram was released by the Jaguars. So starting with Kirk, the Jaguars have traded Kirk to the Texans for 2026 7th, saving $10.73 million against their cap. So they were planning on releasing Kirk, but there was a market. They did well to get anything back for him. So Kirk will be the Texans slot wide receiver. They had a need here because Tank Dell just had his ACL surgery. Dell is not playing in 2025. That's out of the question. So for this year, right now, Nico Collins, wide receiver 1, Christian Kirk, slot wide receiver. I think this probably closes the door on a Stephon Diggs return. I'm never going to say never. If he's cheap enough, maybe, but probably not. I do think the Texans might explore the free agent wide receiver market. Could be players for wide receiver in the NFL draft. They do need a second outside wide receiver. Mechie, Hutchinson are not it. The Texans did take on Kirk's contract around $16 million, which does say to me that if he was released, he was probably going to have some suitors. So maybe there's an extension here. I'm not sure. The Jaguars also released Evan Engram, which saved them just under $6 million in cap space. Now, this one was more surprising to me. I felt like Engram was a part of their plans, but if Liam Cohen wants a Cade Otton type tight end, Evan Engram is not that, right? I mean, that's Brendan Strange, not Evan Engram. So Engram immediately is the best tight end on the free agent market by far. By far. It's not even close. So, and should have a robust market for his services if a team is interested in that type of player, the Evan Engram, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, Noah Fant, that we see that these players are not popular. The NFL has moved away from that type of player, the tweener. So it would require a team specifically interested in Engram's skill set. So like people saying the Colts, that is not going to happen. It has to be somewhere where Engram can play some slot wide receiver snaps. And that's not going to happen on the Colts. So we're going to see. Now, what would I do? Parker Washington and Brenton Strange would be sells for me. So the Jaguars have extra third and fourth rounders in the 2025 NFL draft, $38 million in cap space, probably more now at this point. They made a bunch of other cuts. They're not going to go in with Washington, Strange, Gabe Davis, and BTJ. BTJ is great, but the rest of that's not enough. They're going to sign someone relevant. They're going to use one of their day 2 picks on wide receiver, maybe a tight end. I don't think Washington just gets the wide receiver, slot wide receiver role, handed to him. Can't talk. And Brenton Strange, to me, is just okay. Just like Cade Otton is just okay. I don't think Brenton Strange is even that good. So these feel like opportunity over talent types. I'm not really interested in those types of players in general. Now, next story. Tyler Lockett was released by the Seahawks, and on the same day, DK Metcalf demands a trade. So Lockett was released. This was a given. They saved $17 million in cap space. There was no doubt. He was their clear wide receiver 3, turns 33 in September. This was not going to be a highly paid player, and it made no sense to keep him. Lockett may have a market on a smaller deal. I don't think he's going to be that sought after. He had 49 catches, 600 yards, 2 touchdowns in 2024. At best, I think he'd be a team's veteran wide receiver 3, and the Raiders are like the immediate link, and it kind of makes sense. They have Myers, they'd have Lockett, and then Bowers, and then maybe they'd look to add kind of a third wide receiver to fill out the room and give them that 4-pack. But yeah, I'm not that interested in Tyler Lockett. Metcalf hijacked Lockett Appreciation Day with his trade demand. If you're telling me it's a coincidence that the Metcalf trade demand just magically happened to come out on the same day as Lockett's release, I mean, that's not a coincidence. I mean, we know that that's not a coincidence. It's too on the nose. So we're going to have to see. Some people are saying that the Seahawks want a first and a third round pick for DK Metcalf. That's not happening. So I don't know. Does he get traded? Does he not get traded? I think this is going to play out over the next month. But what do you do? I'd explore the market on DK Metcalf. Typically, players get a value bump when they're actually traded or extended, one of which is going to happen. He's either going to be traded or extended. It's not going to be neither. So there could be a value bump. There are some deals where I'd buy Metcalf, few where I'd be selling. I did see this one. You buy Metcalf for Brian Robinson and Tank Dell. I'd easily take DK Metcalf there. So overall, I'd more be on the buying side than the selling side. Next up, Tutu Atwell re-signs with the Rams. Okay. Atwell signed a 1-year, $10 million deal. It seems like the whole thing is guaranteed. And I think this shows a couple of things. One, the NFL does not like the incoming wide receiver rookie class at all. They don't see a lot of contributors. And I also think that free agent wide receivers are going to get more money than we think, even the not so good ones. This is what Tutu Atwell got. I mean, what is Darius Slayton going to get, who's been better? What is Josh Palmer going to get, who's actually been relevant? So there's something to consider. Atwell will likely serve as the Rams wide receiver 3 in 2025. So Puka Nacua is the 1. Cooper Kupp will be traded soon. I don't think that they can legitimately go in with Atwell as the wide receiver 2, but this is too much money for him to be the wide receiver 4. He's replacing Demarcus Robinson, who has legal issues, as a wide receiver 3. I do think a wide receiver 2 is coming in between Nacua and Atwell. Could be Davante Adams, could be Keenan Allen. But this is the Demarcus Robinson replacement. That's what Atwell is. And I hope you sold Jordan Whittington because he's irrelevant. And I've been telling you that he's irrelevant the entire time. Now, I'd be willing to sell Atwell for any third or really anything you can get. This is not a player type whoever hits, irrelevant for years, and then magically relevant is usually not a thing. So I'm not super interested in Tutu Atwell. And again, I'd be selling for whatever I could get. Now, we'll move into some Patreon questions and then close out the video. Using the pick value tiers, what is the lowest tier Superflex PPR you'd feel most comfortable using as a wide receiver 3 as opposed to a flex position? So this is referencing something that's on my Patreon rankings spreadsheet, which is available on the Patreon, patreon.com/fantasy advice. If you're interested in those, you should sign up. But to kind of address this, there's players like Khalil Shakir, Juwan Jennings, Darnell Mooney. Those are playable wide receiver 3s. Players like Romeo Doubs, Jacoby Myers, Deebo Samuel, those are a little bit lower in my rankings. Those are not really playable. So we're going to see. But in general, yeah, I do a pick value chart that kind of grades out wide receivers. That's kind of what I would say. And of course, I'm always open to having more higher wide receivers. Usually my teams are built that way. I typically build around quarterback and wide receiver and tend to more fade running back and tight end. How would you describe your philosophy on how you like to build dynasty teams? So beginner, it's kind of in concert with what we just talked about. I'd say the main thing is in Superflex, I like building around quarterback. I don't like fading quarterback. I like to avoid older players. I do focus on building a lot of picks, especially in the startup. I like drafting rookie picks if they're in the startup. I like trading for future picks in the startup. I love to get picks cheaper in advance and then be super active on the clock in moving them during the rookie draft. I think that's the biggest thing that I do. Acquire picks before the rookie draft, then work on trading them during the rookie draft, during rookie fever. If I had to say something that I avoid, buying meh players, that middle of the road player. Not typically looking to spend picks on a meh player. You won't see me buy depth. I don't tend to do that. But of course, I talk about this in the Patreon every day, both specific and general in terms of dynasty team building. So it is something that I love talking about. And I don't talk about on here too much because I like to focus on specific players. That's better for the YouTube algorithm. But in general, yes, building around rookie picks and younger players, fading running backs tends to be, trying to find running backs on waivers and lower in rookie drafts tends to be my strategy. Now, if you like the video, make sure to support the channel by subscribing. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty content year-round. Get a 50% discount at all tiers using code TylerYT. You can sign up in the top right corner, patreon.com/fantasy advice. Every sign up helps support my independent content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all